me walk you through the different steps of the final task. We're going to use a very simple example so you can get it and get to work right away. The first thing you need to do is to understand the evaluation rubrics provided by your teacher. Then you need to read and watch the provided texts and answer their questions. This is going to help you get a lot of ideas for your final text. So here, I'm using this text as a model. So I have 10 impacts of the Australian bushfires. I have the physical direct impacts. I have the ongoing ecological and biodiversity impacts, where lots of animals died. I have the mental health costs of these bushfires. And finally, I'm also going to use this part here, which are the public attitudes that are changing. So the people who are trying to save Australia from the bushfires. So those are the different parts of the text that I would be using for this model. Reading the texts and answering the different questions, I use this table to write down some of the ideas and the notes that I took. So of course here it's a very simple example because it's not as big of a text as what you're going to get for your final task. But for example, here the elements I got from the Australian bushfires, well, of course, that they were mega fires, that experts say that because of global warming, these mega fires can come back every year in Australia, that billions of animals have already died, that there's people who are trying to make things better or try to save the world or try to save Australia. I also learned that many people are traumatized by the fires, that they tried to evacuate, or some of them they needed to evacuate, but they were unable, others were unable to evacuate. That there were going to be lasting mental health impacts for individuals and communities. So you see what I did here is I put my notes, but I also took a direct quote from the text to help me. So what I need to do now is to think about ways that I could represent these things in my story in a dystopian format. So what I'm going to do is, for example, the Australian mega fires, I could turn it into an eternal mega fire that even rain can't stop. I can still use the same setting, maybe in Australia, or maybe I don't even need to name where it's happening, but just the fact that it's an eternal mega fire that can't be stopped, it's an exaggeration of what's going on because now it's every year, but who knows, in a dystopian future, maybe the fire will never stop, As for this could represent or symbolize climate change or global warming. So that could be my twist so far. But these are ideas I'm writing down before I write my story. Then for the billions of animals that died and the people who are trying to sort of do things better and save their country, I could represent them by a group of people who want to save the remaining animals from that eternal fire. I decided to call them the Anagus. That's because I did a little research and I found that there was a tribe of people called the Anagus in Australia. So I decided to use that as an inspiration. So these people, for me, they would do anything to save nature. And this could mean that they could be doing bad things or good things also. So there could be good people and bad people in that group of the Anagus. For the and of course they could symbolize environmental activists, and you know that sometimes activists that there could be some extremists also in there, so that could be representing that as well. For the people traumatized by the fires, so I did another group of people that are unable to evacuate. I decided to call them the Left for Dead, or the LFs. I thought it was like a cool name to give them. And then these guys will do everything that they can to survive, including bad things. So these are the people who are traumatized, and they can symbolize, that's it, traumatized people, surviving people. I think they can also represent like migrants who want to survive and need to flee their country. So these are all the different elements that can help me create my story now. Having interpreted my texts through a dystopian lens, it's time to imagine a dystopian story. So here the work is already done, that's the model, but you will quickly realize that the elements from the previous charts are all here. So we have the elements from the current event, and even some of the things that I use for representations and symbols are going to be useful again for my explanations. So the only thing I needed to do afterwards is to transform my ideas into a bigger text and create the summary of my story. So remember when we said that I had the idea that there would be an eternal fire raging on forever. So here I put, in Australia, in the near future, all that's left of the country is constantly burning, even through rain. Experts call this mega fire the Eternal. It started years before because of climate change. Now it's unstoppable. Those who did not die and who did not evacuate were told that no one would come to save them. So you see, this is my setting for my dystopia. It is dystopian because it's a bad future. It's a bad place. There's little hope for the people who want to get out of there. So, but I simply exaggerated a situation that already happened. Okay, so you can read through the text that is included in the model and the different explanations that I've already prepared, be it to do orally or in writing. Okay, and then we could go and check if I have checked all of the different boxes with the checklist to see if my summary would be a good dystopian story. Use the checklist to make sure that your text contains many of the possible characteristics of dystopia. Remember that your story needs to be seen as a dark allegory of a real issue in the world.